Um, to start off with the first question, identifying and sort through the relevant facts presented and by the Oliverises, I put that some of the relevant facts were that he was recently laid off, which created some stress in his situation with his family situation. The increased alcohol consumption, which is the main reason that they were seeing me. The fact that they were immigrants from Mexico, causing some hardships for them because they knew little English, and that money was tight, and that he had trouble making ends meet. Um, so identifying the problems, issues, and concerns that arise by the Olivareses. The wife had come saying that drinking had become an issue for him on the weekends. Being laid off had caused some worries and some stress within the household financially and just emotionally, because they were having a hard time making ends meet, and Mr. Olivares was working long hours and just feeling very stressed at the end of the week. Identifying the possible strengths and positive aspects of the various situation. I put that they very much valued family because the fact that they wanted to come and get help on it, and that they were, before it even became any major issue that stemmed from it, they was just starting to like worry and just the nagging, the fact that they put value on the family, wanted to keep it together. Mr. Olivares was willing to take responsibility. So it says here that he didn't want to let his family down in his responsibilities. So it just shows that he knew what the priorities were in his life, and that he felt that it was his job, his role as a father, as the man of the house, to be able to provide income and to keep their family keep their family comfortable when it came to finances. So that just shows that he knew what his priorities were, and he was hardworking due to like the long hours that he would put in. In terms of knowledge presented in the training knowledge, like in analyzing the issues, I said the issue presented here is that Mr. Olivares feels stressed and tired due to the long hours that he puts on at work, and the stress that not having money, just the stress that he was having barely making ends meet. He felt like the only way he could relax was to drink on the weekends. So what needed to be addressed was maybe some other possible ways that Mr. Olivares could relax, that didn't necessarily involve excess drinking. A list of options and initial plans of actions. I said that I would work with the family, providing family therapy, obviously, and marriage counseling, but also coming up with a list of potential things that can be done on the weekends that maybe Mr. Olivares could feel like he's relaxing, or maybe something that could just channel that desire for him to drink in a more positive light, so he doesn't feel like he has to drink in excess just to relax. I would say that I would work on some stress management and some coping skills for him, so that maybe when he does feel like he just needs to get away or he needs to relax, just different ways that he can handle that in a positive way, kind of with what I said before. I would say that with identifying any additional information, research knowledge, resources that are needed to develop and select options, things that I would gather, things that I would probably look up while dealing with this case. I would probably read a lot of research articles on the effects of drinking that has on the family unit. So whether it's like an alcoholic or just people that like are starting to show signs of that, just kind of how that affects the family unit. What causes alcoholism and the signs that leading up to it. So maybe like how would you identify somebody that is probably showing signs of becoming alcoholic, or they are. I would do the effects of poverty has on alcoholism, because it says that they they and maybe how immigrants and being an immigrant and how that correlates with alcoholism just from the stress of being in such poverty situations. A development of strategy for social work practices. I would do a strength-based approach, so I would assess the needs and the strengths of the family and just some progress that needs to be made. So I would do that through family therapy and marriage counseling, as long as individual counseling. So I would meet with Mr. Olivares and Mrs. Olivares and the kids just to kind of hear what they need to be said. And they could say some things to me that they probably couldn't say within each other, and I could help them process those things. And then when we're in family therapy, kind of bring those up together as a family unit. I would take opportunities for Mr. Olivares to find a suitable job with less stress and maybe a little bit more of a financial comfort and that whole stability. Maybe see what he qualifies for when it comes to getting him some access to maybe some better English classes so that he could learn that and become more qualified. Maybe some more education options. I don't know what his level of education is, but just kind of helping him advance that as far as his career. I would also work on some coping mechanisms, not just for Mr. Olivares, so that he doesn't feel like he needs to be drinking. He obviously finds his family important because of the long hours he puts in and talks about how he feels responsible and he doesn't want to let them down. So he obviously knows that like his family is the most important thing. So I wouldn't say that necessarily his drinking is an issue right now, but I could see how it would in the future be a potential issue. So like addressing the issue now and kind of helping develop those coping skills and maybe helping him and Mrs. Olivares kind of come up with some ways to effectively communicate their problems without feeling like she's nagging him and he's kind of like going against what she wants and all that stuff. I would definitely say that the Olivares' original nationality matters in this case, but in a way that so I feel like family is a huge importance to the Hispanic culture, and I think that being Mexican, that there's a lot of emphasis on that, and there's a lot of importance. So they're more willing to work on it because of how important that is to their heritage. Identify methods for evaluating a consider plan and next steps, revise the plan depending on various possible outcomes. I definitely would expect some resilience from Mr. Olivares. I feel like a lot of addicts, like alcoholics, they aren't willing to admit that they necessarily have a problem. So getting him to realize the reality of his situation, and although it may not be a huge problem right now, just getting him to see look, this is what it could potentially lead to, and helping him address some of the shame and that, and just helping him kind of cope with his emotions and that stress that just helping him to process all of that. Some of the interventions in advocacy, I would obviously advocate for immigrants that have come to the United States, and just kind of the fact that yes, they work very a lot of manual labor jobs, but just providing more benefits for them, providing more services for them, and advocating for that. I would provide family therapy and marriage counseling, and like I said, working on some interventions and coping mechanisms and communication skills for not just Mr. Olivares, but also for Mrs. Olivares and the kids. So I would feel like most of it I would work a lot with the family and kind of help them stay together and work through this together as a family unit, and not maybe necessarily as individual, but all together.